So what are the 5 best and worst cards in Forged in the Barrens? Well, I wanted to lock in my predictions for exactly that in this video. And this one's sponsored by Skillshare, which we'll talk about a little later. But for now, let's go ahead and jump into the 5 worst cards with Serena Bloodfeather. Now, I'll admit I did choose to force a legendary into this list. I didn't think it'd be all that interesting or exciting. I just picked like 5 bad neutral cards, arena filler style cards. So yeah, Serena was my choice for the worst legendary in Forged in the Barrens, which I think will be fairly divisive. And at first, I kind of liked this card as well. I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to debuff a minion. I'm going to get a solid sized minion myself. But after having seen it played a couple times and seeing it in practice, it really feels pretty underwhelming. It's not like it's a bad play. It's, nothing compared to old, terrible legendaries like Duskfallen Aviana or those sorts of cards, or Millhouse, where this is an active downside a majority of the time. But it's just really underwhelming, I think, to marginally debuff something of your opponent's and play like an okay-sized minion of your own. In other words, we have so many other minions in Hearthstone that just like kill your opponent's stuff or take really powerful swings on board. And this is more like a half measure, like a half swing. So it's really specific in its use cases where you're exactly trying to answer a pretty large thing on your opponent's side of the board, or maybe something at 1 health. The stats you get out of it are pretty underwhelming, I think, in most cases. Like, yes, of course, they're above cost for a 2-drop, but still, compared to other plays in Hearthstone, it doesn't really feel that exciting. You're not actually even answering your opponent's thing. It's still there. It still has effects. It still has, whatever else it's doing on board that's relevant. It's still a taunt. You're not even like removing anything. You're just kind of pulling some stats away. It's basically a small debuff, I think, in most cases. So when you add all those up, I think Serena will not be played very often. I just don't think she's worth that slot in your deck, and other cards that are more decisive and more impactful will probably take her spot instead, meaning she's more or less going to be an unplayed legendary. So moving on here to the first of a couple caravans in this video. This is the Prospector's Caravan for Hunter. 2 mana, 1/3, like all the caravans, and it reads at the start of your turn. Give all minions in your hand +1/+1. So some real problems for these caravans, given that they're start of turn effects, I think. Given the way we have like all these rush minions and reactive cards in Hearthstone these days, I think very rarely are these effects ever going to go off. Like if you play it exactly on turn 2 against like a slow deck, maybe it gets there if they don't have, a 2 mana deal 3 sort of card. Often they might still have that sort of card. And then like any point later in the game, like anything other than turn 2, like this is almost never ever going to actually stick and make an impact. So you got a card. It's only good on 1 turn. It's not even particularly well statted on that turn. And then the upside here for the Prospector's Caravan, I'm not even sure that's that exciting. Like hand buff is okay, but it hasn't been a great reliable tool in Hearthstone. It often fails every time we've really tried to make hand buff work. There's a very few select cases where it's been okay, never been really meta defining or anything. So Prospector's Caravan feels like it's just sort of doomed to fail. An effect that's not that great on a super huge delay that's only good on 1 turn, that makes this card a huge liability. Moving on to Yoink. I think some people out there like this one, so this may be another one I get some hate for, and that's okay. I hope I'm wrong. I don't want any card to be bad. I want them all to be exciting. But for me, Yoink, it just doesn't get there. It's a 1 mana spell, right, for Rogue. It discovers you a hero power, and that hero power costs 0. And then you can get your old hero power back, of course, after you use that hero power twice. So here's the deal, right? Like 0 mana hero power is like, sure, yeah, that's fine, whatever. I'll take, a couple heals, couple armors, couple pings, whatever it is, for 0 mana. But it's not exciting. It's not good. It's not like, oh my god, yes, I'm totally dominating this game because I got this awesome 0 mana ping. The base sort of assessment here might be, oh, hero powers are worth 2 mana. That means I'm saving 4 mana with Yoink. But not really. Hero powers are only worth 2 mana because you're not using a card, right? You're just getting a free resource basically with your hero power every turn, so it has to have some mana to make it feel fair. With Yoink, you are using a card to get those hero powers. I just don't think Yoink really packs enough punch for being a card that you're forced to draw. I think this was probably printed to be disruptive for cards like Wandmaker when there's a ton of poisons and all these crazy strong 1-drops. in the pool for Rogue. You need sometimes bad cards or weaker cards in there to disrupt that game plan. So yeah, if you randomly generate this, sure, a couple free hero powers will be absolutely fine. It's not going to hurt anybody. But as a card you need to run in your deck, I think there are so many better options for cheap combo activators and cheap spell activators for Rogue that this one just will not make sense at all. And then next up here, we have the Peon, a little neutral guy here. 2 mana, 2/3 with Frenzy. Add a random spell from your class to your hand. You may have forgotten this card. It got revealed so early on at BlizzCon. And I have to say, it's, of the kind of neutral fillery style cards, I think it was the one that looked the least useful to me. There were some that seemed weak, but they had like specific death battle synergies or spell damage synergies. Whereas this guy, you're getting a random card. Random class spells are okay, but generally, more specific or may not really fit a game plan. Its Frenzy is going to be pretty tough to activate. I think 3 health is a bit of an awkward spot. 4 health or more is going to trade better into other early game minions. 3 health just gets cleaned up by a lot of 3/2s and 3 damage spells out there. So the Frenzy is probably not even going to go off that often, which means, and even when it does work and the Frenzy goes off, it's not going to be worth much because it's just a random spell that you're getting. And how good is that random spell going to be? If you're forced to activate this yourself, you're trading some other card for a random spell, which is like, that doesn't really make much sense either. So yeah, I think every deck will just scoot right on past this guy. Probably won't even consider running him at all. Maybe somebody with like crazy whirlwind stuff, but I think there's just better cards that do better things with Frenzy than the lonely little Peon here. So I suspect Peon will really never see any constructed play at all. And then finally for our last worst card, and I should say these were in no real particular order other than just being the bottom 5. This is Tiny Finn's Caravan. And take everything I said about the previous Caravan and apply it to this Caravan. Start of turn is too slow. Stats aren't quite good enough here for a base 2 drop. Not going to be great later on in the game. And similarly, the effect here, I don't even think is that awesome. Drawing a Murloc might sound cool if you're in a Murloc deck, but keep in mind that Murlocs are generally very low value draws. So a card like this that's supposed to be getting value is drawing something that's really low impact and kind of a throwaway. Also, Murlocs are a very tempo-based deck. They need to make sure they keep pressure and keep a board going. And with Tiny Finn's Caravan, that's hard to do because you're playing a non-Murloc here. This isn't even a Murloc. It's on a future turn that you're getting the next Murloc, so it's all this like setup for later. We have seen some teases with like the new Magic Carpet style Murloc that maybe you can play for a swing and a recovery, but if you're behind on board already, Tiny Finn's dies very easily, and it never gets its effect off anyway, so there's still no value here. So basically, in no way do I ever really see this card working in a Murloc deck, or certainly otherwise. It just feels like it's going to be way, way, way too slow. So that said, let's jump into our sponsor for this video. It's Skillshare. If you don't know Skillshare, it's an online community where millions of people go to take classes to learn various creative skills. You can learn how to draw or paint or video editing. You could make your own YouTube channel just like this one. Skillshare members get access to thousands of different classes, most of which are under an hour with short lessons. For instance, I took this class, Advanced Video Editing with Adobe Premiere Pro, taught by Jordy Vandeput, a fellow bearded creator. And here's a special bonus. The first 1,000 people who click the link in the description will get a free trial of a Skillshare Premium membership. There's a lot to learn in this world, and I'm excited to learn what you guys learn on Skillshare. All right, thanks much for sponsoring this video. So now let's jump into the 5 best cards from Forged in the Barrens. A little bit more exciting stuff here. Starting off with Kario Roam for Paladin. And we got here a card that felt so good to play every time I played it in all the pre-release stuff, because you don't even really need the effect here. Sometimes just a Rush and Divine Shield 4-attack minion on turn 4 is amazing. It's fantastic tempo. And in a Paladin deck like Libram Paladin, where you can even buff this really affordably with cheap Librams of Wisdom, it gets an even bigger stat line to trade into even better stuff. Getting this to 5 attack, for instance, super easy and very, very impactful on board. And then you've also got this effect that discounts holy spells in your hand, which don't scoff at that, because most of Paladin spells are going to be holy, and particularly some big impactful ones, like Librams of Hope. Getting an extra 1 mana discount means those can come down even earlier in a game and make that huge swing that they always make. So You only need this effect to go off once to be pretty impactful. If she ever sticks around on board and gets more attacks, just forget about it. You're going to have so much extra mana from Kario, and she's already a good play at a base level just because of that rush and divine shield. So basically everything about this card fits perfectly into the archetypes for Paladin that we already know are great and work and aren't losing very many cards in rotation. So since she just slots right in as a perfect fit into an already high tier deck, I just can't see a world where Kario Roam is not an absolutely fantastic and super meta relevant card. So next up, let's move over to Warrior with Outrider's Axe. And man, has this card felt strong to play. 4 mana, 3/3. After hero attacks and kills a minion, you draw a card. So, theoretically, 3 cards drawn off this thing is crazy. And it's not hard to get this effect to go off. Whether it's just 3/3s in the mid game or like a rush minion that's traded in and its health is low enough to clean up with the axe, it's always going off as far as I've seen very, very often. And 2/3 cards is practically guaranteed with this, I think, if you're patient at all. And that's obviously a crazy return because you're also getting a pretty solid weapon out of it as well. Like, this is not a terrible stat line at all. And then you're drawing cards. It's just everything Warrior wants in a single card. And my hand was just constantly overflowing because of Outrider's Axe. And also, don't laugh off the 9 damage here. Sometimes late in the game, if you don't need cards, it's just 9 damage face over a couple turns, which might be what you need to get your opponent down to those health thresholds that set up lethals and such. So all in all, I mean, this just felt like an absolute powerhouse of a card. It feels like it's going to be really central to most Warrior decks moving forward because it's just really, really solid and strong. Next up here is my love, Xyrella, my new favorite. She is a 4 mana 4/4 for Priest, of course. And if you restored health this turn, deal that much damage to all enemy minions. So an enormous board swing sort of card here, completely wiping your opponent's stuff very often and developing a 4/4 along the way. And she's only 4 mana. I swear to God, this card could be like 8 mana and it might still get played just because it's an awesome board clear. And it's not hard to get super cheap healing to enable this, whether it's the new card Desperate Prayer that's healing both heroes, or something as simple as a Renew to deal 3 damage and clean up a mid-game board. It seems super easy to activate Xyrella. Frankly, the hero power sometimes is enough. It's just like a Consecration with a 4/4 attached, and you're pretty happy to do that in the mid-game or at 6 mana, whenever. So I didn't find any scenarios where it was really hard to activate Xyrella, or, she was hard to play. It felt like she was always an enormous board clear, stabilized games perfectly, which is exactly what Priest wants to do. So absolutely, I think this will be a big feature in any slower controlled Priest deck for a very long time. Frankly, even like a more board-centric Priest with any healing might even use this anyway, just because she's still a 4 mana 4/4. Not that bad, and it's a huge swing, wiping out your opponent's stuff. So a very high output card that seems almost too good to be true in some cases. Xyrella's gonna be nuts. Next up here is a little bit of a flyer, the efficient Octobot. I haven't seen this one proven as much, and I think there's a decent chance it fails, but I also think it could be absolutely bonkers because of this frenzy cost reduction effect that it has. It's reducing cards cost by 1 when it's surviving damage, which for Rogue, reducing the cost of cards in hand has historically been really, really good because, of course, they care about squeezing a ton of stuff into a turn, all that crazy tempo, combo activators. The cheaper cards get, the more absolutely broken things Rogues can do in a single turn. So I think, that could be some crazy combo enabler like an OTK setup or something with the Octobot, or more often, probably just a really strong tempo card where you play this down, it gets frenzied, and the next 3 or 4 turns, you've got really, really efficient stuff happening that just overwhelms your opponent. You generate so much tempo that they just can't keep up. And I think the frenzy here is pretty easy to get off. And sometimes that'll be the Rogue doing it themselves, whether that's like an Og Merchant style card with this. Maybe sometimes you're even happy to backstab it just because you're going to get so much tempo return. But also, even if you just play it out, 4 health at 2 mana is a bit awkward for most opponents to deal with. Most damage at that stage of the game is from like a 1-drop that's a 1-attack minion, a 2-drop that's usually at best 3 attack. You've got like 3 damage spells, all the Frostbolt adjacent style cards at 2 mana. So the 4 health, I think, is a magic number for this card to actually go off really, really often. And you're not even sacrificing a ton of stats as Rogue to get this thing going either. So it's a nice like building block basically moving forward into the mid game. So all in all, it just feels like everything lines up perfectly on this card, and the potential for tempo is completely nuts. So this is my gamble card because I haven't really seen it proven yet, but man, does it sure feel like it's going to work really, really well. And then finally closing this out is Blade Master Samuro. This card is just nuts, dude. It's such a powerful swing card again, much like Xyrella. You play this guy on board, you clear all of your opponent's stuff because there's a handful of different ways to buff this very easily. Think about Priest with Apotheosis. I saw this in Warrior and Rogue with Nitro Boost Poison, for instance. And of course, there's a handful of other ways to get this thing's attack a little bit higher, various hand buffs, etc. And it doesn't take a whole lot of buffs to make this absolutely bonkers. Getting it to like 2-3 attack is usually enough to really swing your opponent's kind of aggro start and begin stabilizing the game, because this just cleared everything and it left behind, you know, like a 3-4 or something on board as well. That you can build on to take future trades and such. Even though this Frenzy's a one-time effect, leaving that minion behind goes a really long way. And then, of course, just Apotheosis is like a crazy combo with this because of all the lifesteal. Everything it hits, you could heal basically a Reno-style effect as well. Go from 1 to 30 off of a big Samuro without much problem at all. So it's like a lock in Priest, I think. Crazy good in Warrior and any other class that can buff this one at all. Samuro just feels like a very crazy efficient board clear. And also, don't sleep on it even if he's not buffed. I've seen multiple board states where there was enough 1 health stuff lingering around, or maybe a 2 health minion he trades into, where he cleans off a bunch of minions, even without being buffed. So at a base level, solid card. Any follow-ups on this, it's just absolutely busted. It's felt so strong every time I've seen it played. So I'm almost certain Samuro is going to be a big feature in the meta for sure. And there you go. That wraps it up for our best and worst cards. Couple hot takes here. I think also some pretty predictable choices as well. But I'm curious what you guys think are going to be the best and worst cards in Forged in the Barrens. What was I totally wrong about? What did I get right? What did I miss? Share all those thoughts and more in the comments below. Of course, also check out our sponsor down there in the description. Thanks much to them for sponsoring this video. And all that said, thanks much to you for watching, and until next time, game on.